and thank you very much for coming along on this hot summer day. It's the 30th of July here in Cambridge, and we're experiencing 93-degree temperature outside, and in fact, according to the heat index, it's up around 100 when you feel the humidity and the like. So it's a warm day. It's a warm day, and it's a warm day on a warm planet, as we're beginning to discover. This is part of the problem, and we basically are having to ask the question, in fact, can we live with this new kind of circumstance, this new kind of climate, which we are all now committed to, and through no fault of our own, as it were, well before we were in charge, or in fact in any position to do anything about anything. This has been unleashed upon us. And it raises the question, which we're going to look at today, about water and life on the blue planet. Can we learn to manage water and live sustainably on this blue planet, the only blue planet in the known universe? Can we learn to manage water and live sustainably? That's a double-edged question, because really the issue is, can we learn to manage ourselves in reference to what water is about to do as our climate changes? We've been told by the scientists all along that the water budget of the Earth is going to change very quickly, since the heat budget of the Earth has changed because of climate change induced by the human use of fossil fuels. We're seeing it in the weather being experienced over large swathes of the Earth's surface. Recently, Europe's heat wave, in effect, has sparked a whole series of health warnings. This was back in 2017. But in fact, in 2018 and 2019, it's been even worse. In fact, this year, 2019, set all sorts of records in Spain, France, Germany, England, Italy, and Greece. These record heat temperatures are the new norm. This is registering itself in many places, especially in cities near arid regions, as a water crisis. We've seen this in reference to Cape Town. In particular, Cape Town is an area that has been hit pretty hard by what some call a 100-year drought. But the drought comes in such a way that it affects the entire population that's running out of a water supply. Take a look. It's really quite dramatic.
At this point, the chance of reaching day zero is now very likely. We can no longer ask people to stop wasting water. We now have to force them.
The listening officer?
We need some backup here.
Okay, copy.
We have level 6B water restrictions where you are not allowed to use the municipal drinking water for anything else except drinking. You cannot wash your car, you cannot water your garden. Within 2 minutes you get some illegal car washes. You can drive behind the quantum. You don't want to alert them.
Why are you running? Why are you running the water so well?
You know, like they say, they need to put something on the table. If you take away my car wash, what do you expect me to do? You want me to break in? Do you want me to rob the people on the street? Yeah, I'm doing an honest living. And you're taking this away also. So yeah, that's, I feel a little bit bad about that.
Those are mine. And who's the big one? Correct. Come on.
You cannot make a profit out of water. Water is necessary for life. It doesn't mean if you don't have money you can't get water. No, we must provide water for everybody.
Okay, we get the sense there of the crisis emerging, turning into a political crisis in a way that is water for everybody, not privatization, for only those who can pay for it. Well, Deutsche Welle carried a documentary on it too. Take a look.
At one point it was going to be that Cape Town would be the first city in the world to run out of water. We had a 1 in 400 year drought, a very rare occurrence. So this drought came in an unexpected way and we were not prepared for it, certainly not its extremity.
Every time the Western Cape Authority or the local municipality raised the flag and said there's a problem, National please help, National came with some excuse. Now, water has been a weapon without any question of doubt between the ruling African National Congress and the Democratic Alliance.
We had to take emergency action. And that action included two things: augmentation, but most especially demand management, reducing demand.
when there's no water, the children are going to think, but mommy, you must make a way. You must always make a way. You can't tell them the government put the water off or the city put the water off. You must go see where you can find water. Cookies? Don't you want cookies? Let's cookie.
This is worth watching in detail. It's a docu-film by Deutsche Welle, the German news agency. They put it out in English. Subtitle, A Warning from South Africa, City Without Water. What they're suggesting is that it's going to be the way of the future. And in fact, we're seeing it start in other continents as well. India has experienced extraordinary heat waves. And this summer in particular, in July 2019, Chennai comes to a standstill as its reservoirs run dry. There's coverage of this within India, but the English-speaking world needs to learn about it more generally.
மழையும் பெய்ய மாட்டேங்குது, இந்த ஊருக்கு மழையும் பெய்ய மாட்டேங்குது. இந்த வருஷமா நாங்க எந்த வருஷமும் நாங்க கஷ்டப்பட்டதே கிடையாது தண்ணிக்கு.
This is a city of 4.6 million people running out of water. This is extraordinarily severe. This is from the South China Morning Post. They've been covering this over in China. In effect, they realize how regionally this is very important. In India, there's an effort to try to discuss this, and the BBC has launched the discussion.
Hello, namaste, and welcome to Delhi. I'm Divina Gupta, and this is Work Life India on the BBC, the show that looks at all things to do with money, the work we do, and the lives we lead. Now, the world's second most populous country is faced with a severe water crisis. According to a government think tank, 21 of India's major cities are at the risk of running out of groundwater as soon as next year.
Okay, 21 of India's cities. These were several million in each city. 21 cities in India, the world's second most populous country, next to China, are in danger of running out of water next year. And they're beginning a discussion about it through the BBC now. Take a look.
Some experts contest that, but in places like the southern city of Chennai, the worst is already here. Residents there have to queue up to fill their pots from rationed government water services. Hospitals, schools and hotels are struggling to cope. So we are asking, how can India tackle this water crisis? According to the Indian government think tank Niti Aayog, nearly 600 million people in India face water woes each day. That's almost half of the country's population.
600 million face water scarcity each day. Half of the country's population. We don't, even in cities the size of South Africa, have any sense of the scale of the problems beyond Cape Town. Big problem in Cape Town, right on the ocean, But it's not just isolated cities in Africa that have been hit by a 3-year drought. In India, it's almost half of the population, 600 million people. Any kind of variation in temperature, any increase over the summer months, any change in the monsoon rains is going to have an enormous impact.
And 200,000 people die every year because they have no access to clean water. But are efforts being made to improve the situation, and what more needs to be done? To talk all about it, we have Aditi Mukherjee, who's part of International Water Management Institute. Welcome, Aditi. Are people more aware of the environmental issues in India now than they were earlier?
Yes, I believe so. With like droughts following floods, I think water and issues of water, air pollution are on the news constantly. So I believe people are more aware than before.
All right, we also have Jyoti, who's working on recharging water tables, especially in city, through rain harvesting solutions. Welcome, Jyoti, and I know you have a water mantra right at the start of the program. What is it?
The 5 R's of water: reduce, reuse, recharge, recycle, and most important, respect water.
Absolutely, respect water, because that's the lifeline, and we talk all about it on the show today. And we have Arun Krishnamurthy, who actually gave up a very cushy corporate job to be part of Environmentalist Foundation of India, which revives water bodies in southern India. Arun, from your heart, which has been more satisfying, the money or the clean water that you provide to many?
Working for India's environment any day.
Absolutely, isn't it? But I want to ask you, Arun, that after so much effort that you've done in reviving water bodies in Chennai as well, we're seeing one of the worst situation of water crisis. Can you tell us, you are coming from that city right now, what's the situation?
It is an extreme desperate situation, no doubt. The monsoons have failed last year, because of which a dynamic industrial hub, which is an economic hub, is definitely facing a major water crisis, no doubt. But also something which we need to understand, the pressure on groundwater reserves is immense, because of which we've arrived at this point in time, right? Also the fact that this has been in the making for the last 2-3 decades now. And definitely the corrective measures have also started in the last 5-6 years. But it's not enough, and we need to do so much more, and we're running out of time.
Were you given warnings when the water crisis was there, like Cape Town, where people were counting down to day zero, that's when they will not have any water, 90 days before that, and conservation efforts continued?
The media's attention to Chennai's water crisis has been in the recent past, but Chennai citizens and their reactions to Chennai's water crisis has been for over 20 months. So it's not that something we've suddenly woken up. The media is talking about it now, yes, no doubt, but Chennai citizens, yes, had
and still we saw this large crisis, Aditi, and Chennai is actually in a coastal area. It's next to India's largest natural beach, Marina Beach. It has 300 plus lakes, it has 600 plus ponds, it has an urban marshland. Why is it that nothing was done to resolve this crisis before reaching at a point where residents have to struggle for drinking water as well?
So while the point I would like to make is that the situation of Chennai is extreme right now, but what has happened across major cities in all parts of India is the land use is such that these wetlands, these ponds, these natural river bodies have been encroached almost everywhere in name of real estate. And that is what has actually intensified the problem, because those bodies are also the places where groundwater gets recharged. So we have kind of removed a natural source of water which purifies water, which recharges water. And what we are seeing in Chennai is actually symptomatic of many other Indian cities.
Okay, now the reason is the recharge hasn't occurred. That's true when development occurs. Why? Well, because there's an expansion of impervious space, either rooftops of buildings or the macadam and the tar and the cement surfaces of roads. What happens is that the rain usually percolated down through the earth to recharge the groundwater supplies, built up the reserves for springs and underground reservoirs that could be tapped through wells. But if that water never gets there, if it flows off of the surfaces, the impermeable surfaces, right into the oceans, the rivers, the oceans, and especially if in a heavy rain event, it comes fast and goes through areas very quickly, it'll destroy things in flood terms at the same time that it usually wipes out great amounts of agricultural land with the attending soil erosion that devastates the productivity of those soils and washes all of that soil structure down into the oceans, the rivers and the oceans, which then become silted up. A horrendous problem throughout the subcontinent of India, but not just in India. In fact, it's throughout now a great many areas of the developing world. I'd urge you to check it out on Transition Studies. How can India tackle its water crisis? Because they do come up with some solutions. Interestingly enough, this is also going on right during the same week that India has launched a new space program that they're very, very proud of. Take a look.
Well, India is set to head to the moon today. These live pictures show the rocket that carries the Chandrayaan-2. It's a lunar lander. It's due to blast off in a few minutes' time at 2:43 p.m. local time, to be exact. We're getting these live images right now from the location there. That is, if everything goes according to plan. This is India's second attempt to launch the lunar probe after a technical glitch caused the mission to be aborted just 1 hour before launch last week.
Chandrayaan-2 is India's most challenging mission so far, a highly complex undertaking. The spacecraft should reach its destination in the second week of August, when it enters an elliptical orbit of the Moon. Then it will approach the lunar surface. When the landing robot Vikram separates from the craft, the most exciting phase begins. India's first soft landing on the Moon. The selected landing site is about 100 kilometers from the lunar South Pole, a region of craters on the dark side of the Moon. The blue markings here show frozen ice in craters, as spotted by satellites. Given the high plateau, the landing robot should touch down gently amid ancient rocks. After landing, Vikram will open its doors and release India's first lunar rover onto the surface. Small as a briefcase, it can travel up to 500 meters. With its onboard instruments, the rover will measure water-bearing minerals in the lunar rock, as well as the concentration of elements such as aluminum, silicon, and titanium. Meanwhile, the landing robot will record moonquakes and explore so-called lunar plasma, a thin layer of electrically charged particles above the surface. Vikram and the rover will be able to collect data for a few Earth days. Then it will go dark for 14 days. That's when the temperature drops to 160 degrees below 0 Celsius.
Now that's pretty inhospitable, 160 degrees below Celsius, and in fact it's not looking there for anything else but, at this point, minerals and water. They've in fact landed near or they're going to land in September with the module near the South Pole of the Moon, where water is expected to exist, according to previous interpretations of photographic surveys that have been done from orbiting spacecraft. Now, that'll be quite exciting, and in fact, the Indians are very proud of this effort. You can sort of get it from their news system.
We've been to the moon, we've been to the Mars, and we are going to the moon yet again. So what's special about Chandrayaan-2? Well, this time we're actually going to be landing a robot on the moon, make that robot go around the moon even, and possibly look at the moon as a space station even for the future. We plans, of course, but we have to take those first steps today. And yes, did I mention, it's two women who are actually steering this project from start to finish. Here's a look at why exactly Chandrayaan 2 is so special for India.
10 years after its first lunar mission, the Indian Space Research Organization is finding its way to the moon again. The 3,84,000 kilometer journey will take 50 days. The orbiter, lander and rover together carry 14 instruments to carry out different scientific experiments.
Okay, this has raised the issue of whether India is now becoming, in effect, a space superpower, and that's raised a controversy in India. Should they be spending money on space missions when, in fact, there are crises at home? There's a kind of race to develop the moon internationally at this point. The Chinese are interested in it as well and are going to launch a commercial venture soon. But as authors have pointed out, Bill McKibben among others, but David Wallace Wells as well, the house is burning down. We're launching moonwalks and Mars landings from a burning planet. We're keeping alive the myth of perpetual frontier expansion when we should be looking at the sober science of human survival on the Earth's surface. This is why many argue that if human civilization is to survive, we will need to struggle to create a new kind of citizen science alliance. And it's emerging around the world to work together to devise a just transition to a sustainable future.